Introducing the hosts of Wrestling with Freddie, Jeff Dye, and Freddie Prinze Jr.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Friends. With me is Jeff Dye. I'm Freddie Prinze Jr. Let's start the damn show. Jeff, you got some funky lights, laser lights going on behind
I didn't even know that would happen. I just saw it and it was pretty cool. Yeah.
That was pretty awesome.
I didn't know that that's a feature here on Riverside. I know we use Riverside to film this. I didn't know you could do that. What's up, buddy?
I am working, and so that's why I'm not available to you guys on the live ones that we do where we cover wrestling every week. This time, we're going to go back and we're just going to discuss the greatest or our most favorite 20 factions in pro wrestling history. And you guys can pick your top three from there. We'll probably tell you what our top three or at least what our favorites are. And you can tell us how wrong you think we are or how awesome we are because you totally agree, depending on how you feel. And you're both right. Anyway, we're talking factions, not factions of fruits and vegetables, factions of wrestlers.
Fair
the
enough.
Greatest ever.
I got a question for you with your wrestling knowledge.
Oh,
so
no.
I feel like wrestling nowadays, AEW and WWE alike, are more faction heavy than they've ever been.
Hell yeah.
And there's always been factions for sure, but we're like in a faction era, I would argue. Now, do you think that that's because Vince was still around when the faction era kind of started, but do you think this was a Triple H idea? Is it just a modern idea? Is there a reason we're leaning towards the factions? You tell us, because I genuinely don't know.
100% Triple H. He would fight for factions and more of them. He was fighting for Game of Thrones storylines before Game of Thrones, the book, was written. Like he loved it. He thought that's what would dominate the stories and you could get a lot of different matches out of those. And he would pitch it all the time and Vince would shoot it down all the time. But it was something that he was very, very passionate about. And for sure, once Vince was gone, it totally dominates all their stories now. And by the way, what he said would happen is happening. So he wasn't wrong. Like, they get tons of storyline out of all these factions, whether they're big or small, whether they're 2-man factions or 4, 5, 6, 7-man factions. Like, they get a lot of steam out of all of them. So yeah, you're dead on with your hypotheses.
That was my guess, but I also like factions. So remember when Jacob Fatu, the werewolf, got injured, and then they made this announcement that, like, oh, when they're the tag champs, like, any two from that faction can represent the tag belts. Was that
rule.
Always a rule, or was that?
Man, I don't remember that. I don't remember, but I like that
I'm
rule.
like, even
I like that anyone.
This is a new faction thing, you know?
Yeah. All right.
Like New Day, you just go, oh, all of a sudden now Kofi and Big E are fighting for the tag champs, and then like 3 months later, it's Xavier and Big E fighting for it. So
maybe it always has been that way. Maybe.
I don't know. It's interesting, but it's a very faction rule. So anyways, I felt like it fit the subject of what we're talking about.
I agree.
It's interesting.
All right. This is not in order of greatness. This is not in order of my favorites. This is in what they say is what is it commonly known as no particular order. And we're going to start with one of the best to do it. The Wyatt family, sir. Bray Wyatt, Luke Harper, rest in peace, and Eric Rowan, now part of another faction. This was a beautiful, horrific faction that legit captured the hearts and minds of wrestling fans. I don't mean that colorfully. I mean that literally. It changed the way people viewed wrestling. The phone thing became so prevalent and connected with it as all the fireflies in the crowd would be there. The promos felt so authentic and was able to connect to so many people, even though he was this like supernatural creature. And to build on that, it was the last attraction in wrestling. Bray Wyatt was the after once Undertaker retired, he was the last attraction in wrestling, and it was so iconic, and I think it makes the list not just for what it was, but for what we all believe it could have been, which is something that would still exist today. Although there'd be no Wyatt 6, you would have a different version of it, and I think everyone agrees it would be great. I know you love the Wyatt family too, man.
I think that the Wyatt family is one of my it is one of my favorite factions, but I was in great debate when we were going over all this of like what would be my number one faction. And the Wyatt family is in my top 3. I think it was so good.
Yeah.
I also think he's like a visionary. The way I say that MGF is like just his wrestling sensibilities are perfect. I think that Bray's creativity sensibilities are absolutely perfect.
Yeah,
he can make something that is completely unrealistic feel good in wrestling. Like he was able to do so many things. I think that, you know, obviously it's sad that he passed as a person, but I didn't get to know him as a person necessarily. But it's such a devastation to wrestling because he was doing these things that like you just hadn't seen, or he'd done something you had seen in a new way. I think he was literally a freaking wrestling genius, and the Wyatt family worked. He could even put big guys that weren't really over. It's not like Eric Rowan was selling a lot of T-shirts and stuff, but like it worked in the Wyatt family. It worked. Braun Strowman was a very, very green wrestler, but then backing up like Bray Wyatt in the Wyatt family worked.
They were the triple threat, man. They could wrestle, they could talk, and they had the look, right? At least all you need is one of them to talk to be able to like be all through when you're a whole faction. You just need one talker, like Ric Flair. This one is worthy of note because it was the last time NXT was any good. This was the black and gold era of NXT, the Triple H era of NXT, where we first got to see what the future of the main rosters would look like, because he was able to tell stories without Vince and Kevin Dunn kind of being on top of him all the time. It wasn't looked at as anything serious until people started saying, whoa, this is better than the stuff on SmackDown. And then they changed it to, you know, splatter paint and Nickelodeon circa 1987 and do what they do now, which is more like High School Musical stuff than professional wrestling. But the undisputed era that had Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish, and Roderick Strong. These dudes were all technical, like masters in the ring. They all had charisma, and Adam Cole can talk his frigging ass off. He also kicked Ricochet in the face in the middle of a backflip. It was like the sickest move I've ever seen in my life. Dude, I love that move. It's so awesome. But they were so great, and I don't think they get talked about enough. I don't think they give enough love, and I'm not going to take too much time on them because I know they're not everyone's favorite, but I just wanted to shout those guys out. You watched NXT back then. Did you dig them, or did you not see them?
I was late to the party on them, but Adam Cole is such. I'm actually a little disappointed with the latest Adam Cole.
I think I feel like a lot, dude. I think that's why.
It just feels like he went from this is going to be the next guy, and maybe going over to AEW hurt him, or I don't really know what happened, but like when you watched him, you were like, this guy's going to be a giant star, like getting the whole crowd to go baby, like he was one of the biggest guys in PLEs, like when they would do those matches, and you're like, dude, this guy is like just so good. He really carried that faction. I wasn't as big of that faction as I was just of Adam Cole himself.
I get that.
He felt like young Shawn Michaels. He's using the sweet chin music or the super kick or whatever you want to call it. It just felt like we were witnessing one of the biggest stars in wrestling. So I don't like the faction as much as I just liked Adam Cole. But yeah, he gave me an excuse to watch NXT. He made NXT really great. They had so many good things going for him at the time.
This was one that I have heard of, obviously, and I've seen the American form of it in AEW. But the Bullet Club from New Japan Pro Wrestling, then Ring of Honor, and eventually AEW, it's consisted of dudes like AJ Styles, who we all know, Kenny Omega, who we all know, the Young Bucks, who a lot of people know, and a whole bunch of other professional wrestlers. This one has probably had the most run through it, I think, out of anybody. But they're trying to bring some notoriety to it through Switchblade, Jay White, and the Gun Sons, I'll call them. I can't remember, Billy and something.
Yeah.
They're trying Austin,
yeah.
Thank you. Still one of the coolest entrances with that country like hip hop music, and then the spotlight, and then the bang bang spit. That's so good, man.
The spit is amazing.
Yeah, dude. What do you mean spit's amazing? Spit's amazing. I don't know much about them, but they get big time love from the hardcore fans. Are you more familiar with them than me, or are you more American wrestling, just getting to know them too?
Are we talking about the Bullet Club or the Gun Boys?
Bullet Club.
So for me, I don't care for the Bullet Club. Here's the thing. I'm not a Young Bucks guy. I'm late to the Kenny Omega party. I really like Kenny Omega a lot. Yeah. But this feels like just we wish we were the NWO. We wish we were the Clique. We do the thing. We do the too sweet. It's already been done. Listen, like I feel like, and this, I know everyone's going to get mad. All the wrestling fans are going to be upset that I have this opinion. But it's like the Young Bucks are basically just like the Rockers. They wish they were Billy Gunn and Road Dogg. They wish they were the NWO. It feels like they tried to do a bootleg version of something that's already great and already happened, in my opinion.
I would argue, though, that that's wrestling. That everything's been done. Everyone is using, right? Don't you think so?
It is. And I'm always harping on the same kind of
I don't
things.
care if we argue. Yeah.
But no, I'm just saying, like, I'm always harping on the same, like, you copied this. It's a very comedic brain to be like, that's already been done, or you stole that from so-and-so. But it's like,
it's your show too. You can harp if you want.
It's a little bit too much. Like, I can't even listen to some guys sometimes and go, Jesus, this guy is really inspired by The Rock, isn't he? You know, like, it just feels a little too much. And I think that the Bullet Club feels like a we wish we were NWO, we wish we were the Clique kind of guys. And for me, it doesn't do much for me, even though I can like those guys in individual things.
Moving on to the Heart, we have groups like the Heart Foundation that had, well, you know, the main members, but had Owen and the British Bulldog as well. Even so Matilda, shout out to Matilda. We also have the New Day, founded by Xavier Woods, Big E, and Kofi Kingston, former champion Kofi Kingston, and Big E. Put some respect on their names. But we're going to settle in here, number 15, again, not in any particular order. The 4 motherfucking Horsemen. My favorite faction of all time, sir.
Interesting.
Led by the legendary Ric Flair, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, second only to Andre the Giant, though far superior on the microphone than Andre, but Andre was scary. The 4 Horsemen with great members like Tully Blanchard. I saw this comedy wrestling, and they had, instead of the 4 Horsemen, it was the Fromage Horsemen, and they were all named after cheese. And Tully Blanchard was Tully Blancheddar. Barry Windham was in there as well. Arn Anderson. They had multiple titles at the same time. The greatest tag team of their generation when they were champs. The greatest champion of his generation when he was champ. They talked the talk. They walked the walk. They flew in jets and drove in limousines. They didn't pull up in a rental car like these pro wrestlers of modern day. No.
Yeah.
They rolled up like Logan Paul rolls up, but they only reserve those cars for Logan now. They don't give it to the rest of the stars. Although every once in a while, Drew gets a cool truck. But I love the 4 Horsemen, sir. How about you? Come on, man. You love the 4 Horsemen.
I love the 4 Horsemen. There's been a lot of different 4 Horsemen.
That's good. That means they have staying power, baby. Staying power.
So it's like, I didn't originally know that. When I was a young man, I thought that the 4 Horsemen were just the 4 Horsemen I saw.
Yeah.
I didn't know that my dad's generation also had a 4 Horsemen, and that later we would even have like a girl version of the 4 Horsemen. We'd have a bear. Mongo McMichael would come be part of the 4 Horsemen. Like, there was like so many different 4 Horsemen, which I love the reference to the Bible of the 4 Horsemen. I love that I like the staying power. I love that Ric Flair's in it. I like all the things about the 4 Horsemen. Yeah, big fan. I have nothing crummy to say about the 4 Horsemen. I like it.
Now, the next 4 I think are super important. However, we won't have time to get into all of them. So I'll breeze over the Shield if you don't mind.
I don't mind. I think that they was better individuals.
Yeah, and everyone knows their story. It was recent enough that we don't have to relive it. But they kicked ass, and the turn and the breakup of them was beautiful. But Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, the visionary. So let's get into the next one, which is Evolution, which was another Ric Flair faction. Another reason why he's one of the greatest of all time. He can just start a faction whenever the hell he wants to. Damn it. And this one, he brought in Triple H, who worships the ground that Rick walks on. Randy Orton, who's even buffer now than he was when he debuted 20-some years ago. And frigging Dave Bautista, who is like 300 pounds, 8% body fat, probably less. Sorry for the insult. 6% body fat. And like 10 feet tall and super friggin' jacked. And in real life, like he adopts like puppies that are going to get killed at kennels, and like the sweetest dude ever. Like he's super nice, and he does jujitsu. He is a good actor, man. I think he's the best actually out of all the wrestlers turned actors, and he keeps getting better. You can see the growth in his work. But this was Ric Flair showing these boys how to live the Horseman life. And they all did it. Some of them in real life a little too far. But the original Four Horsemen lived it for real too. I saw him chilling on a boat going like 100 miles an hour, just flexing his bicep, dude. He's such a gangster. But yeah, so Evolution, they didn't have the longest run, but everybody in that group became a world champion. One of them already obviously was. So highly successful, unstoppable, and they were pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to be short on this one just because that was the time that I stopped watching wrestling.
Yeah.
I stopped watching wrestling because I was like going on from home to home. I didn't really have a place, and I damn sure didn't have television or cable. So I like missed this era of wrestling. But looking back on it, once I got back into wrestling, like a few years later, I started watching it and following it again. I was like, I would have loved that group. Like they were awesome. They really flirted the line of like, they were definitely heels, but like they were so cool as heels and giants and strong. It was kind of all the things I liked. I would say, would you agree wrestling was kind of in a lull?
Oh,
it was
a big lull, right? Big lull. Yeah. Low ratings. Yeah.
So it was a good time to fall out. But I think if I was watching wrestling at the time, that'd have been my favorite for sure.
And the Batista rope shake, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Next up is most people's favorite. D-Generation X, sir. Birthed in the Attitude Era, with members like Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels, super awesome. Probably not my favorite, but probably the best wrestler that's ever wrestled, ever. Triple H. Chyna was in it. And even members like X-Pac, the New Age Outlaws, Billy Gunn, and my man who was Road Dogg. He was money on the mic back in the day. He
still wrestles, Billy Gunn. That's what's
Billy
crazy.
Gunn still wrestles and looks like Solomon Grundy from the DC
He's got to be the most
like,
athletic person that's ever been in wrestling.
Oh my God, dude, love Billy Gunn. Everybody loves this group because they got away with whatever the hell they wanted to get away with. They did whatever they want. Their music said they were gonna, and they kept that promise. They got to make fun of their boss all the time. They got to say that their boss likes cocks, which every employee wants to say to their boss at some point or another, I guess. Some incantation of that. And everybody loves them. I'll be honest with you. They weren't my favorite. This is when I kind of stopped watching wrestling because I was like, yo, these stories are getting goofier every single week. And I just saw somebody go, yeah, I like cock. I didn't say it. And I just thought it started getting goofy to me. But I acknowledge their greatness, and I bow down to the king, to Triple A. Bow down to the king. I do. And I know that they're both awesome. It just wasn't one of my favorites. But go ahead, take it away. I know
we agree.
Oh,
we 100% agree.
Oh,
yeah, because here's the thing. I don't like DX. In fact, I loved to hate DX. I can appreciate that, like, they were such a great, huge, popular part of wrestling. But like, for at that time, we had a biker gang, we had these angry Canadians, we had all these other things going on in wrestling.
Angry
you had
Canadians.
It was like Stone Cold over here being the king, Goldberg being the king over here, and we had the NWO over in WCW, and we had DX over in WB. Everything that the DX was doing was popular because it was like very immature and very naughty, And I'm just sitting there going, I don't really know. I'm not really following this, like it didn't feel natural to me. Like what they were doing just felt like a very strange type of humor.
You and I were the only ones because everybody else freaking loved them. But you and I are both like, ew.
Yeah, it felt weird. It felt like strange. I was just going, I don't know. I was just like, I liked the badass guys, and I liked Kane and Undertaker, and I liked all that kind of stuff. And they were just doing something that I was going, I don't know. It feels kind of strange and junior high-ish. But that's also why it was popular, because it was strange and junior high.
And you have fireworks going on.
Fireworks, yeah. Like, man, every time
which is so perfect for what we're talking about. I wish people could have seen that and understand the context that we're trying to colorfully and gently lay down. All right. Next up, now some people have blamed them for the downfall of professional wrestling, but I'm going to take you back to 1996, Jeff. I don't think you blame them. I think you think they're pretty freaking cool. And this faction was led by a man named Hollywood Hogan, who was getting millions and millions of dollars, and he let everyone know in every promo he said. And also in this faction was Scott Hall, who was making millions and millions of dollars. And by the way, he was the coolest of everybody in here.
The best.
And finally, Kevin Nash, who's pretty friggin' cool as well. I got to work with him a little bit on an A&E show, and him and JBL were my two favorite guys out of everybody. But this is your favorite one, so please, sir, take it away.
The NWO was cool. They were not only the guys that you grew up watching in WWF, but now they're like, they've reinvented themselves, you know? Now it's not just Diesel. We're cutting all the gimmick crap. I'm Kevin Nash. I'm not Razor Ramon pretending that I have this fake accent that I don't have.
I love it so much.
I'm Scott Hall, baby.
Yeah.
And I'll show you that I made the Razor Ramon cool. I am not eat your vitamins anymore. I'm Hulk Hogan. All the little things you liked about Razor Ramon were Scott Hall, the guy. And he's a big Elvis fan in real life, like Scott Hall was. That's what the hair came from. Like I loved all three of these guys. And as the popularity of this group grew, eventually you saw every wrestler in the history of that locker room become an NWO. It got so popular. This is why it's my number one and it's my favorite, because it's undeniably great. You don't see a DX that's red and black. You don't see like, oh, we're doing a DX that's a girl version. Like you had the NWO, and it was so popular that they made an original. Oh, now we're the red and black. Now we're white. Now we're a Latino. We're the LWO. The Blue
Didn't they have the Wolfpack too? Like, yeah.
The Wolfpack was kind of like, it's just us, the original guys. And then
that was the OG.
You had like the Blue Meanie would wear like a blue world
shout
order.
out Blue Meanie.
I was in Cleveland, Ohio a few months ago doing a comedy show, and a guy in the front row had an NWO shirt just watching my show, wanted to too sweet me when I got on stage. It's lived on. Cool. It represents this cool thing. I'll never think anything. I might someday, but to this point in my life, nothing is cooler to me than the New World Order. I think it's like the nicest, coolest, best thing. It's got old dogs. It's got it lives on.
Well, I totally agree with you on NWO, on Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. I was never a Hulk Hogan guy, so I thought Evil Hogan was a little cooler, but I never thought Good Hogan was cool. So he never got to that level for me. I'm the only one that didn't like Hogan. I always liked the guy he wrestled. Because Hogan would only win on the pay-per-views, and my mom wasn't going to pay for that. So I just saw him getting screwed over and over, and bad guys winning and getting over. And I was like, yeah, man, these guys are winners.
Bad guys are always cooler. I mean, who's cooler? Darth Vader or Luke Skywalker? Like Darth Vader's cool, you know?
You don't even have to ask.
Yeah.
So there was other comedy bits as well. The Spirit Squad was definitely not there to win. We won't get into the Spirit Squad, but they were there, and they turned out Dolph fucking Ziggler, one of the greatest salesmen in the history of professional wrestling, and took the greatest spear still to this day in the history of professional wrestling. God bless Dolph Ziggler, Nick Nemeth. All right, you guys, we're going to continue this conversation on the Thursday show, Unsanctioned Thursdays, because we still got a lot to go over. Thank you for listening. Tune in every single Wednesday. Leave us reviews. Share us with your friends. Tell us about your homies. If you're mad at us, hit Jeff up on social media. He has it. I don't. And tell him how mad you are at me or him. Anyway, thanks for listening. Peace. This has been a production of iHeart's My Cultura Podcast Network. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.